The holiday we call Thanksgiving did not begin as a feast, a tradition, or even a national idea. It began as a moment of fragile survival art, unlikely intersection of cultures, desperation, diplomacy, war, myth-making, and reinvention. Today, it's wrapped in warmth, memory, and ritual. But its origins are far more complex and far more human than the sanitized story many of us grew up hearing. Let's unravel the real history of Thanksgiving, a story born from struggle, forged in cultural collision, and transformed across centuries into one of America's most symbolic holidays. For the English colonists who landed in present-day Massachusetts in 1620, survival itself was far from guaranteed. They arrived in November late, unprepared, and already weakened by disease and hunger. The world they stepped into was not an untouched wilderness, but the homeland of the Wampanoag people, whose civilization had endured for thousands of years. Just a few years earlier, this region had witnessed a catastrophe. A mysterious epidemic, likely a leptospirosis outbreak, swept through coastal native communities, killing an estimated 2/3 of the local population. Villages that had once been vibrant centers of trade and culture were left silent. The Wampanoag Confederacy, led by the Sechemausemiquin, known in English accounts as Massasoit, was recovering from enormous loss, caught between rival tribes, and facing the threat of further instability. Into this fragile balance walked the Pilgrims. The early months were brutal. Half of the colonists died during that first winter. Cold, disease, and starvation had taken its toll. Their graves were intentionally hidden to prevent local tribes from seeing how weak they truly were. By spring, the colony hovered on the edge of collapse. Then something remarkable happened. A Patuxet man named Squanto, known as Squanto, stepped into the story. Kidnapped years earlier by an English explorer, taken across the ocean, taught the English language, and eventually returning home to find his entire village wiped out, Squanto became a bridge between worlds. He taught the colonists how to cultivate the land, find resources, and negotiate with neighboring tribes. The arrival of Squanto was so improbable that even the colonists saw it as divine intervention. But history often pivots not on miracles, but on individuals shaped by extraordinary circumstances. Squanto was living proof of how global contact had already transformed North America long before the Pilgrims set foot on its shores. Through Squanto's diplomacy, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag forged a treaty of mutual protection and alliance born not out of friendship, but necessity. The Wampanoag needed allies to strengthen their position against rival tribes. The colonists needed food, knowledge, and time. By autumn of 1621, after months of labor, cooperation, and uncertain peace, the harvest came. This is where the familiar story begins, but not quite as we know it. There was indeed a gathering. It lasted 3 days. There was food, venison, fowl, maize, fish, perhaps squash, and fruits of the season. The Wampanoag were not invited guests in a ceremonial feast. Historical accounts suggest they arrived after hearing celebratory gunfire and contributed much of the food themselves. The gathering was not a Thanksgiving holiday in the modern sense. It was more of a political event, a diplomatic moment, a rare instance of coexistence amid a continent already reshaped by disease, conflict, and colonization. There was no long table, no buckle hats, no cranberry sauce, no pie. Turkeys likely roamed the area, but roasted waterfowl and venison were far more common. What we now imagine as the first Thanksgiving is less historical facts and more the product of centuries of storytelling and national myth-making. The actual term, Thanksgiving, had an entirely different meaning in the 1600s. A day of Thanksgiving was a solemn religious observance, fasting, prayer, repentance, not feasting. The idea of a joyful harvest celebration becoming a national holiday would come much later. As time moved forward, the tenuous peace fractured. Colonists expanded. Tensions rose. Alliances broke. By the 1630s and 1640s, New England was defined by conflict culminating in King Philip's War in the 1670s, one of the most devastating per capita wars in North American history. The descendants of those who had once shared a harvest feast now found themselves in brutal conflict. Yet the memory of that early gathering lingered, reshaped, repurposed, simplified. The transformation of Thanksgiving into a national holiday began 2 centuries later, in the 19th century, largely due to one woman, Josepha Hale, a writer, editor, and persistent cultural advocate. Hale campaigned for decades to establish a national day of gratitude and unity. She believed a common holiday could help bridge the cultural divides tearing the nation apart. Her letters reached governors, senators, and ultimately President Abraham Lincoln, who, in 1863, during the darkest days of the Civil War, declared a national Thanksgiving to be observed annually. Lincoln envisioned a moment for a fractured nation to breathe, to mourn, to heal. In that proclamation, the holiday took on a new purpose, not to commemorate a specific historical event, but to foster national unity. The story of pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a peaceful harvest was embraced as a symbol of cooperation and idealized narrative that softened the harsher truths of colonial expansion. The imagery of turkey dinners, family tables, autumn warmthies came later, shaped by art, literature, and tradition. In the 20th century, Thanksgiving continued to evolve. Norman Rockwell painted its most iconic image. The Macy's parade became a cultural landmark. Football reclaimed the holiday with yearly rivalries. And in kitchens across the country, immigrant families reinvented the meal with their own culinary traditions. But even as the holiday grew, so did reflection. Today, Thanksgiving carries multiple meanings. For many, it's a cherished celebration of gratitude, togetherness, and family memory. For others, especially Native communities, it is a day of mourning, a reminder of dispossession, loss, and centuries of broken treaties. Both perspectives sit within the broader story of America, intertwined and inseparable. The real history of Thanksgiving is not a simple tale of harmony. It is a story of resilience, survival, alliance, conflict, myth-making, and reinvention. It is a reminder that history is never static, shaped not only by what happened, but by what we choose to remember. And perhaps that is why Thanksgiving endures. Not because of the meal, the traditions, or the myths, but because it invites us to pause, to consider where we came from, what we have, what we've lost, and what story we choose to tell next. History is not a single truth. It is a constellation of truth, sometimes aligned, often in tension. Thanksgiving sits at the center of that constellation. And by exploring it honestly, we uncover not just the story of a holiday, but the story of a nation still grappling with its past. That has always been the power of history, not to comfort, but to illuminate. And in the story of Thanksgiving, the light reveals something deeper than legend. It reveals us. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more great history.